He was the golden heir of a vast empire, his life draped in luxury most could only dream of: private jets, sprawling mansions, and a world that bent to his whims. Yet, despite the glittering facade, there was a hollowness inside him, a yearning he couldn't quite name. That was until he saw her. She was sitting on the steps of an old, crumbling library, her hair tangled, clothes worn, and eyes that held a quiet fire, eyes that told stories of pain, loss, and survival. Everyone passed her by, treating her as invisible, but something about her presence stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't just curiosity, it was an inexplicable pull, as if fate had drawn him to her. He started appearing near the library, under the guise of coincidence, offering small gestures, a sandwich, a warm drink, a blanket on a cold night. She accepted nothing at first, wary of his intentions, convinced that kindness came with chains. But slowly, trust formed in the space between them, fragile yet undeniable. He learned her name was Lila, and that she had grown up in orphanages, abandoned by a world that should have protected her. She carried herself with dignity, despite the hardships, and spoke with a wisdom that outshone the glittering halls of his family's boardrooms. One rainy evening, he found her shivering under the shelter of a broken awning. He offered her his coat, but instead of taking it, she turned him away gently, saying, "Your world is different. I don't belong there." Her words cut deeper than the cold wind. He realized then that this wasn't just a fleeting infatuation. It was a love that defied the boundaries of wealth and status. Determined, he began bridging the worlds between them, introducing her to kindness he had never shown anyone, and slowly proving that love could exist without privilege or pretense. But the world they lived in was ruthless. His family would never accept a homeless orphan into their elite circles, and whispers began to spread. He faced threats, ultimatums, and even betrayal from those he once trusted. Yet, his heart was unyielding, and every glance from Lila reminded him why he had to fight for her, no matter the cost. One evening, under the soft glow of city lights, Lila finally broke her silence. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm nothing. I have nothing." He took her hands in his and said with unwavering certainty, "You're everything I've ever needed, and nothing else matters." That night, everything changed. The world they knew, the rules they were supposed to follow, and the boundaries they were told to respect. But love, as they discovered, doesn't ask for permission. The days that followed were electric, charged with a tension neither of them could name. Every stolen glance, every touch that lingered a heartbeat too long, seemed to exist in a world apart from the one they knew. But the outside world was relentless. Rumors, whispered behind closed doors in his family's marble halls, began to circulate. The boardroom meetings, once his sanctuary, became minefields of judgment. His father, a man who commanded empires with an iron fist, summoned him one evening, his eyes sharp, like daggers hiding behind a mask of composure. "You're wasting your life," his father said, the words cold, deliberate. "You're about to throw away everything our family has built. That girl, she's nothing but trouble." "I don't care," he said, the word surprising even himself. The fire in his chest had grown too fierce to be contained. "She's not nothing. She's everything I've been searching for." His father's expression darkened, the faintest tremor of anger betraying the controlled menace he usually wielded effortlessly. "Do you know what you're saying? She's a street orphan. People will talk. Your reputation, our legacy, it will all be ruined." "I don't care about any of that," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "If you can't see that, that's your problem, not mine." And with that, he walked out, feeling a thrill of liberation and fear intertwining in his chest. He didn't return to the mansion that night. Instead, he found himself wandering through the streets where Lila had spent so many nights alone, remembering how the rain had soaked her the first time he saw her. He imagined her there, waiting, and knew he had to fight harder, not just for her, but for the life they could carve together, against every expectation, every insult, every obstacle. When he finally found her, she was sitting on the steps of the library again, the same place where it all began. She looked at him, her expression a mixture of relief and caution. "You left," she said softly, but there was no accusation in her voice, only a quiet hope that he hadn't given up. "I had to talk to my father," he said. "And I told him nothing else matters. Not the wealth, not the status, not anything. Only you." For a moment, she just stared, her eyes searching his, trying to read the sincerity she had learned to doubt in others. Then slowly, as if making a decision that could change everything, she leaned in and rested her head on his shoulder. "Then we'll face it together," she whispered. The next weeks were a test of endurance and resilience. They navigated secret meetings, hurried whispers in crowded streets, and the ever-present eyes of society that would never understand. Every gesture, every small moment, was a declaration of defiance against a world that told them they didn't belong together. But even as they clung to each other, the pressures mounted. His father, refusing to accept the relationship, orchestrated events to separate them. Invitations to lavish galas were used as traps. Shadowed figures tried to intimidate Lila, and whispers began to creep into the media, casting doubt on her character. Yet, every challenge only strengthened his resolve. He realized that love was not a gentle river. It was a storm, fierce and unrelenting, and only the brave could navigate its currents without being swept away. One night, as they hid in the quiet of a small, forgotten cafe far from the city's glittering chaos, Lila's hands trembled in his. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't belong in your world. I don't even know how to exist in it." "You belong with me," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "Not because of who you are or what you have, but because of who you make me want to be. I've never felt like this before, not with anyone, not even with everything I've ever owned. You've awakened something in me that no wealth, no power, no title could ever touch." Tears slid down her cheeks, and for the first time, she let herself imagine a future where she was more than just a shadow of society's neglect, where she was loved, cherished, and seen for who she truly was. The world outside didn't pause, though. His father escalated his efforts, hiring private investigators to follow them, spreading lies to sully Lila's reputation, and even offering vast sums of money for her to simply disappear. But she refused. She wasn't someone who could be bought or coerced, and the fierce independence that had kept her alive all these years now became a shield for their love. Then came the turning point. The day the billionaire son publicly declares devotion to her in a way no one could ignore. It was at a charity gala, the kind that gleamed with wealth and power, attended by the city's elite. Every eye turned as he took the stage, ignoring the whispers, the stares, the judgment. "I know who I am," he said, his voice steady, echoing to the grand hall. "I know what my family expects, what society dictates, and I know the risks I take today. But none of it matters because I have found someone who has shown me the truth about life, love, and courage. She is not defined by where she comes from, by her past, or by anyone's opinion. She is Lila, and she is my heart. And I will spend every day proving that nothing, no title, no fortune, no pressure, can change that." The room erupted, some in shock, some in admiration, but the sound barely reached him. His eyes never left hers, and when she walked towards him, elegant yet humble in a simple dress, the space between them seemed to vanish entirely. His father, seated in the front row, was livid, but in that moment, even the most powerful man in the room realized that control had limits. Love, raw and unyielding, had already claimed victory. The days that followed were a storm of confrontation, compromise, and courage. The son and Lila navigated legal battles, societal scorn, and the painstaking process of being accepted not just by the world, but by a family who saw her as an outsider. Every challenge tested them, but also solidified the bond they shared. And yet, even in triumph, there were shadows lurking. The enemies they had made, the whispers that never fully faded, and the secrets Lila carried from her past threatened to unravel everything they had fought for. She had seen the world at its harshest, survived its cruelties, and now, in a life of unimaginable luxury and attention, she wondered if she could truly belong, or she would always feel the weight of being an outsider. The storm of their lives didn't end with public declarations or fleeting victories. If anything, the battles only intensified, testing every ounce of courage, patience, and love they had cultivated. Lila, once a shadow in the city's alleys, now found herself navigating a world of glittering chandeliers, whispered judgments, and eyes that measured every step she took. She knew that the path ahead was not paved with comfort. It was a gauntlet of scrutiny, expectation, and lingering resentment. But she also knew she had something worth fighting for, a love so fierce that it refused to be extinguished. He had never felt more alive or more terrified. Every time he saw her hesitate in social gatherings, every time her eyes flickered with doubt, he felt the weight of responsibility crush him. He had promised her a world she had never known, but he also realized that love was not about protection alone. It was about partnership, trust, and surrender. And surrender, for both of them, would be the hardest thing to master. One evening, they escaped the city's suffocating glamour, slipping away to the coast where the waves crashed against cliffs in a thunderous symphony. The wind whipped around them, tugging at their hair, tearing at their clothes, but in that chaos, they found clarity. Standing at the edge of the world, he took her hands, their fingers entwined like threads that had always been meant to meet. "You've given me everything," she whispered, her voice trembling against the roar of the ocean. "Not just love, but courage, hope, a chance to believe in myself." "And you've given me everything," he replied, his eyes locked on hers, every word imbued with solemnity and fire. "You've shown me what it means to be human, to feel beyond wealth, beyond power, beyond the cage of expectations. I would rather have this," he gestured at the raw, endless sea, "with you than a lifetime of palaces without you." Tears glistened in her eyes. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel unconditionally, without fear, without doubt. The barriers of class, of status, of the judgment of a world that had never understood her, dissolved in that moment, leaving only the raw, unstoppable force of love. Back in the city, their bond became a revolution of sorts. They were no longer two people hiding in shadows. They were a beacon for courage, defiance, and authenticity. Their love became the story everyone whispered about, the tale that challenged tradition, wealth, and social hierarchies. Lila's presence in his life forced his family to confront their prejudices, their fears, and their cold hearts. Slowly, grudgingly at first, then with reluctant admiration, even his father began to see the truth, that love could not be measured by lineage, wealth, or status. But it wasn't all triumph. Shadows from Lila's past emerged, the very thing she had fought so hard to bury. A figure from her childhood, a man who had haunted her dreams and threatened her survival, appeared in their lives, bringing danger and uncertainty. And with a sudden intrusion, the couple faced a reckoning, the realization that love alone could not shield them from the storms of life. They would have to fight, to strategize, and to risk everything for each other. He refused to let fear dictate their future. Together, they confronted the threat with a combination of courage, cunning, and unyielding determination. Nights were spent planning, days were spent protecting each other, and moments in between were stolen for whispers of reassurance, kisses that spoke of eternity, and touches that reminded them of why they had chosen this path. Every trial they faced only cemented the truth that their connection was unbreakable, forged not in convenience, but in fire, in struggle, in undeniable devotion. Eventually, the world had no choice but to acknowledge their triumph. Lila, the homeless orphan who had once been invisible, became a symbol of resilience, strength, and grace. She didn't just survive her past. She transcended it. The media that had once mocked her now marveled at her presence. The social elite that had shunned her now sought her wisdom and perspective. And the man who had once lived in gilded isolation now stood openly proud beside her, his eyes reflecting the love and respect that had always been denied to him by those around him. In a grand ceremony that merged simplicity and elegance, they pledged themselves to each other. There were no grandiose displays meant to dazzle the world. Only the purity of intention, the sincerity of promises, and the undeniable magnetism of two hearts that had weathered every storm together. As Lila walked down the aisle, her hand in his, the silence of all swept through the hall. Every gaze was fixed on her, not in judgment, but in admiration. Every whisper of doubt had been silenced by the undeniable force of love and courage that radiated from them both. The vows they exchanged were not merely words. They were declarations, mantras, affirmations of a life they had fought to claim. "I choose you," he said, "not for what you have or what you've endured, but because of who you are, and because without you, nothing else matters." "I choose you," she replied, tears flowing freely now. "Not for the life you can give me, but for the soul I've found in yours. I choose every hardship, every risk, every fight we've endured, because it led me to this moment and to you. And in that instant, the world seemed to pause. The glimmering chandeliers, the sparkling gowns, the muted murmurs, they all faded away. What remained was a pure, unshakable essence of two souls intertwined, a love so profound that it transcended circumstance, challenge, and history. Their journey didn't end at the ceremony, for life never truly ends. It evolves. They continue to face obstacles, but now with a shared strength that made even the most insurmountable challenges seem conquerable. They traveled the world, not just for pleasure, but to help those who, like Lila once was, had been abandoned, overlooked, or underestimated. Their philanthropy was not charity alone. It was revolution. Every initiative they launched carried the imprint of their shared experience. Compassion, resilience, and the belief that every person deserved dignity, hope, and love. And yet, in the quiet moments, when the city lights dimmed and the chaos faded, they returned to each other with the same intensity as the first time their eyes met on those crumbling library steps. Lila would lean her head on his shoulder, and he would press a kiss to her temple, both silently acknowledging the battles they had fought and the love they had conquered. He often marveled at the irony, how the son of a billionaire, with everything in the world, had found completeness not in riches, but in the spirit of a girl who had nothing. And Lila, once invisible, once abandoned, now stood at the center of a life she had never dared imagine, not because of wealth, but because of love's audacious power. Their story became legend in its own way, not for the opulence that surrounded them, not for the power they wielded, but for the courage to defy expectation, to challenge prejudice, and to love without compromise. People spoke of them as a symbol, a testament to the idea that true love is transformative, unstoppable, and magnificent in its purity. And when the world seemed too heavy, when whispers of doubt or remnants of fear crept back into their lives, they would retreat to the ocean cliffs, where the wind tore their clothes and the waves roared below. There,